Well, good morning. For those who are still logging in or can see us, welcome to the Fiduciary Point of View. We're excited to just give a mid-year update as to what qualified retirement plans look like, how they have handled 2020, because there's been just so many headlines. We've got some wonderful partners here with us. What I'm going to do right now, though, before introductions, I'm just going to allow another minute or two, Jordan and Shelley, if that's okay with both of you, just because we want to make sure all participants, if you haven't figured out Zoom yet nowadays, we're still giving people a little bit of time just to remain patient, to make sure that they can log in and that they're doing good. But until then, Jordan and Shelley, how many of these have you done where you've felt like you've got Zoom all figured out and unfortunately you don't?
Yeah, everybody's got a plan until you get zoomed in the face. That's for sure.
Great. But
It's fun to connect in all the different virtual environments. So we thought there was just Zoom, and then they're all coming out, and the technology companies keep going.
it's still moving. It is still moving, but I do have 10:32 on my clock. We're going to give it one more minute here before we get started. And as we'll talk about today, again, this is going to be a mid-year update. This webinar is being recorded. So if there's any part of this where you miss or you're not able to see or even hear us, it's going to be recorded so that you have access to all of this information. We want to make sure that not only you have access, but if you'd like to pass this along to any committee members, any HR representatives that you work with, or just anybody that you find this to be applicable news for them, we want to make sure it's readily available. So our team at Beacon Point is going to be working and making sure that not only you have access to this information, but that it is something you can go back to and pass along if you need it. So again, just going to wait one more minute here to make sure that all participants have no issues logging on and that they can hear us going forward. And to make sure that we can fill the empty void, what I'll do for those who are logged on, as you can see here, we've got Beacon Point, which is myself, Cross Plans, which is Jordan, and the Standard, which is Shelley, all of which are wonderful partners of Beacon Point. Cross Plans is a third-party administrator. The Standard is a record-keeping service, and they have been vetted and completely cleared by our 401k committee at Beacon Point, which is, it's quite the undertaking to be approved to be one of the valued partners. So we appreciate working with them to do that. So I've got 10:33 on my clock here. I'd love to get started. Again, today is going to be recorded. We anticipate about 25 minutes of information and time for questions after the introductions. If you have any questions, I'm going to leave my email in the chat. My email is mhughes, Hughes, at beaconpointe, POINTE.com. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email with those questions. We want to make sure that we get them answered in the time allotted. And if some are more specific, we want to make sure that we can come back to them later on. But anyways, let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce the partners here with us. We've got Jordan Cross with Cross Plans, great name, by the way, and Shelley Chang with the Standard. Shelley has been working with the Standard for a few years now. She grew up in Orange County, so she understands California very well. She is one of the valued partners, again, we have for the record-keeping side. Shelley, I'll let you do a little bit more of an introduction, but I'm going to move over to Jordan. Jordan also has been with Cross Plans since 2000, I apologize, but about 15 years, correct?
Yeah, that's about right.
About 15 years he's been with Cross Plans. They're a third-party administrator. They help ensure that plans stay compliant. And again, another wonderful partner of Beacon Point. They are the subject matter experts of everything we're going to be going over today. And so what I get to do is I have the honor of passing off the baton to Jordan, who's going to be able to run this. And I'll let you both give a little bit more of an introduction to yourselves, who Cross Plans and the Standard are, and then let's just dig into the material. Again, I'm going to drop my email into the chat box so you have it.
Cool.
Great. Thank you so much, Mitch. We're both very excited to be here. The Standard, as Mitch said, we are a record-keeping partner, but really keep an outward focus for our clients on just extending a tremendous level of service and also providing a really deep level of consulting with every plan that we work with, staying focused on the most important thing for all retirement plans, which is making sure all of our participants in our plans are ready for retirement and ready to receive that paycheck at retirement. I'll let Jordan share a little bit about himself and his value that he's going to bring today, and then we can go ahead and dive into what we're going to cover and really get nitty gritty. So Jordan.
Sounds good. Thanks, Shelley. As Mitch indicated, Cross Plans is an ERISA consulting, actuarial consulting, and third-party administration firm. 365 days of the year, we live and breathe the design, administration, and compliance of qualified retirement plans ranging from one person to over 10,000. We're really excited to be here to partner with Beacon Pointe and Standard. And, you know, as they say, the only way to liven up a party of actuaries is invite a CPA. So we're going to try to keep this lively. We're going to try to keep it energetic, but we got some really complicated, dense material, but we're excited to go through it with you all.
Thank you, Jordan. And, you know, with the passing of two of arguably probably the most sweeping pieces of legislation we've had touch the retirement plan industry in over 30 years, it's likely if you're attending this call that you've already delved into some high-level provisions of both the CARES Act and the Secure Act. So our goal is to kind of explore what the adoption of these provisions look like in practice, and also share a lens with you into what other companies like yours are doing to ensure that they're in compliance. So the first piece that we want to cover and take a look at today is going to be the Secure Act. And the Secure Act, note that this is a piece of legislation that needs to be followed by you as an employer. There's no choice in opting in or opting out of this component of legislation. And the other piece of legislation that we're going to cover today is the CARES Act. This is optional, and we're going to talk about how it looks like from an employer's perspective, how you opt into this provision and how you have the availability to opt out of this provision and what that may look like. So let's get right into it. First, we'll be reviewing the Secure Act. So Jordan, can you help me understand how does this affect me if I'm an employer?
Yeah, no, Shelley. Mitch gave us kind of a broad overview of who would be attending, a range of people with qualified plans, maybe thinking about qualified plans. And I think arguably the Secure Act is the most sweeping piece of legislation since the 1986 Tax Reform Act. There are a lot of moving parts to this. We always recommend that you speak to your CPA, your TPA, or your ERISA counsel. But we're going to focus on the four items, looking at the RSVP and participants we think will be most applicable for you. And as a TPA and consulting firm, we're also going to highlight those things that we're getting the most questions on from our existing plan sponsors. We're going to touch on those four kind of across the top. But on the bottom, you'll see the three big ones that we're not going to talk about. Great to dive into with Mitch or one of us offline at a different point. We'd love to explore those with you. But we're just going to hit the high points today, Shelley.
Great. And you know, I'm curious, you know, say I'm a participant in a plan and I'm 71 years old. With this increased age for a required minimum distribution, how does that affect me today in 2020? What can I expect? Yeah,
so RMDs, or required minimum distributions, are going to come up twice today. Once here, we're dealing with this presentation chronologically. So first with the Secure Act, and then again with CARES. So we'll be excited to talk about this later. But historically, the RMD age was 70 and a half. At 70 and a half, an owner of a business was required to take a required minimum distribution from a plan. If a non-owner was still working, still actively employed, they could elect to defer or they could take it. But what the Secure Act did is for participants who are not yet in pay status, it effectively increased the age from 70 and a half to 72, which I think as we look at demographics and statistics with employees and people working longer, people don't need access to money. We don't need to be forcing money out of a plan early. So, Shelley, in your example, if you were born before July 1st, 1949, you're probably already in pay status and probably taking RMDs. If you're born after July 1st, 1949, we're going to have the opportunity to push that out to 72. Now, spoiler alert, CARES has changed RMDs for 2020 no matter what, but the Secure Act gives those plan sponsors on the call who are 69 or 70, gives us a little breathing room before you're forced to take those required minimum distributions.
Well, this definitely seems like a big advantage. And, since our goal is really to ensure our participants are set up and ready to replace their income at retirement, increasing that age where individuals are outliving their retirement income, this can only really be seen as a positive. So, as we delve into another component of the Secure Act, we definitely see a new kind of addition of workers, right? This idea of a long-time and a part-time worker. And while this component of the legislation is really not going to be fully enforceable or fully mandatory until 2024, I think there may be some employers on this call who would be interested to understand, maybe if this is something they want to talk to their record keeper about today, and maybe they want to talk to their TPA about making a plan amendment today to include this provision. So Jordan, can you really just help me understand how this affects plans and who could benefit from it?
Yeah, Shelley, I think that often, for those of you with qualified retirement plans, that compliance testing, non-discrimination testing is a necessary evil that we all have to go through on our qualified retirement plans. And often we struggle between the notion of keeping a plan in compliant and offering a benefit that maybe embraces company culture. And this provision of Secure, which there's still a lot to be determined, and really 2021 to 2024, we're going to learn a lot more about it. But it's paving the way for a plan sponsor to allow their long-term part-time workers the ability to control their own destiny and participate in a retirement plan without negatively affecting their compliance testing. And that's really an important feature, because often, if we were to look at the demographics of people working between 500 and 999 hours, I think we could assume that many would not elect to participate in a plan. Many will be living paycheck to paycheck, won't have the discretionary income to participate. But if you made your plan entry and eligibility more liberal, you run the risk of really mucking up your compliance testing, because you're going to have a lot of people in your test who aren't working those hours or aren't contributing to the plan. So this long-term part-time workers is both participant and plan sponsor friendly, because it's going to allow us to open up the ability for those employees to contribute to the plan without some of the negative compliance concerns that we might have with compliance testing, top-heavy, profit sharing. So any businesses in agriculture, farming, construction, manufacturing, and production, we're going to be able to offer the best of both worlds. We're going to be able to keep the compliance testing relatively controlled, but also reward those long-term part-time workers, which could be a great retention tool for larger companies. I think that this is one of those rare times where they're under ERISA. We often joke that it's a lot of Peter robbing Paul, but I think this is one where everybody comes out a winner, and definitely something for larger businesses to consider talking to their ERISA consultant with, because I think there's going to be some cool opportunities in the next couple of years to get out in front and be on the cutting edge of this for recruiting and retention purposes.
Absolutely. And in a market of virtual recruiting, any tools in that toolbox are surely going to be helpful. And, so far we've gone through, we've taken a look at provisions of the Secure Act that mostly affect plans that are already in place. So if you'll allow us, we want to take a moment, we want to switch gears, and we want to look at some provisions that affect plans that may be new. And so with those ongoing plans that are already in place, we're really curious to understand as a group. You'll see in the bottom of Zoom, there's a little chat box for kind of looking for some intel and some information on you as plan administrators. If anybody is available or if anybody can respond in there and just let us know. Oh, it looks like we're having some audio quality issues. I'm going to try to turn off my video. Mitch, if you could let me know, does that improve the audio quality?
It did a little bit, but yeah, Shelly, as you do that, just to answer, if there's, I want to make sure that we get all of those questions answered as they do, if they do start to come in with the chat box here, but it does help a little bit.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to try to connect a quick audio.
Yeah. And as that goes on, Jordan,
Yeah, you could jump into it, Mitch, a little bit.
Yeah, would love that. We can
Yeah.
definitely come back to some of the things that we do want to touch on that Shelly was mentioning.
So as Shelley indicated, one of the holdbacks to ERISA plans is always the linear process. And listen, I'm a process-driven linear guy, so I love that. But often plan sponsors can't read the tea leaves. Often plan sponsors aren't prepared to make commitments on new plans while running a business, while kind of keeping the trains running on time. And occasionally, and by occasionally I mean about 50 times a year, somebody calls our office in January, February, March of the following year and says, oh my God, is it too late to start a new plan, or can I start a new plan? And historically, we've had to say, unfortunately, under ERISA, plan documents need to be signed and executed before the end of the year. Well, the Secure Act's changed that. And I think this is a really important conversation, either for those people on the call who don't have plans yet, or who are considering or have considered adding a defined benefit plan in the past. Because often we kind of hold people firm. At our firm, we kind of require people to sign plan documents by December 15th, usually. Well, now you know in the back of your mind that either you could set up a new employer contribution plan, a profit sharing plan, or a defined benefit plan between now and the end of the year, or next year in 2021 for the 2020 plan year, as long as you create it and fund it prior to taking the tax deduction, claiming that corporate deduction. So the ability to create a retroactive plan is a really exciting tool. And when you're talking to Mitch or your Beacon Pointe team, this is definitely something that you can consider. Having an actuary or TPA firm run some illustrations in the fall. You may not have to pull the trigger, but you may be able to save that for Q1 of next year. So the extended deadline to adopt that new plan is really exciting and is really going to be something that I think in our firm and our practice, as we work with CPAs and sophisticated advisors like the Beacon Pointe team, it's really going to be an area of opportunity for owner-only plans, small businesses, or people who haven't yet taken advantage of setting up a defined benefit plan. So the other thing that we like to talk about is one of the barriers to entry for many to starting a plan are the hard dollar costs, because setting up a plan, writing the plan documents, doing the administration and compliance, it's not free. Even if it's a bundled price where everything's kind of baked in and cooked in, nothing in life is free. We know that. But the setup and the implementation of plans historically has only allowed a $500 tax credit for the first 3 years, so $1,500 total. Well, under the Secure Act, they've really incentivized people to not let cost be a barrier of entry. And so if you've yet to establish a plan, and you should talk to Mitch and I about that, but if you haven't set up a plan yet, this year you have the opportunity of a tax credit of up to $5,000 a year for 3 years. So there's really a great opportunity on that tax credit to mitigate some of the costs and that barrier to entry to setting up a plan. And then lastly, we're not going to delve too far into it, but the Secure Act really is trying to incentivize people to utilize auto features, auto enroll, auto escalation. And so there's some tax advantages and incentives for adding those auto features to the plan, but that's more an offline case-by-case conversation. So as we transition here to the next element of the Secure Act, Shelley, are we ready to rock and roll?
Yes, everything is good. We should be A-okay on the audio quality. Hope everybody survived the earthquake I created over here.
Awesome. So when we're looking at the Secure Act, the fourth item that we really wanted to talk about, and listen, I know I'm an ERISA consulting nerd, and I live and breathe this stuff, but I think this is a silver bullet panacea that has been rolled out for those of you with plans that are failing compliance testing, those plans that have struggled with compliance testing. You've probably heard the term safe harbor. And for those plans or plan sponsors on the call, or business owners who don't have a plan or don't have safe harbor is the ability to essentially, I know Mitch is recording this, so I say it hesitantly, but buy your way out of compliance testing. By committing to safe harbor, you're guaranteeing your participants either a non-elective contribution of around 3% or a matching contribution around 4%. The challenge with safe harbor is that it's historically been a proactive addition, that you could add it by December 1st of a calendar year for the next year, but that you couldn't implement or deploy that solution mid-year. The Secure Act has brought forth the opportunity for plan sponsor to add that 3% safe harbor up until December 1st of this year, and be able to guarantee that they're going to pass those darn ADP ACP tests, which often result in the 401k refunds. Or if you're still not ready to make a decision, from December 1st on until the due date for those refunds for ADP testing, you could actually add a 4% non-elective safe harbor. It's important to note that this does not apply to a match. So it's the non-elective. So everybody who's eligible for that contribution would get it. We can give it to only non-highly compensated employees. There's a little bit of discretion there, but the ability to add that 3% in 2020 for 2020 is such a powerful tool, because often when Mitch, Shelley, and I are consulting on plans, one of the major issues that we deal with is a business owner or controller, HR consultant saying, my plan is failing testing. How can we solve this? And often it's, unfortunately, we can't solve it till next year. Now, for the first time, we can solve it this year, in the year, or even after the end of the year for the prior year. So if your plan is not a safe harbor plan and you've struggled with testing, I'd really recommend setting up a time to talk with Mitch or to talk with your ERISA consultant about whether adding safe harbor here in 2020 is right for your plan.
And Jordan, I'd be interested to know, because it could be that we have some plan administrators on the call who maybe have reached a point in their plan year where for the first time they're at a turning point where they may be at risk of failing testing. So would be interested to understand the impacts, how they would traditionally, without the safe harbor non-elective provision being available, how they would traditionally handle those failed testing.
Yeah, Shelley, I think that's a really good question, and I think it's really germane and prudent to what's going on in the environment and demographic right now. Is that for many employers, maybe those who aren't even hugely affected by COVID-19 and the coronavirus, we're seeing participants potentially change their deferral percentages. So to your point, Shelley, you could have a plan that has routinely passed testing, but if 10 or 15 employees change or lower their deferral percentages, you could have compliance testing issues. And so at the end of the year, compliance testing issues on those ADP test, actual deferral percentage, or what you probably know as your 401k test, often there's really only two solutions. You give money back to those highly compensated employees, and that includes business owners and your top earners, or you inject some money on a pro rata basis to some of the bottom earners. Well, again, this safe harbor opportunity gives us the opportunity to give plan sponsors one more tool in the tool belt. And as you said before, Shelley, the more tools at your disposal, the better off the plan's going to be for the participants and the business owner.
And Jordan, I want to ask another question too.
Yeah.
And this is probably going to be a one-word yes or no, but
yeah.
When it comes to regulations, the Department of Labor, ERISA, all of the different standards, do you expect regulations to go up or go down in the future in regards to things that you just, such as the safe harbor provisions or matching principles or all of it? What do you expect in the future?
I wish it was a yes or no answer, Mitch. I think that a lot obviously depends on what happens in November, and I am not in the prediction game for any elections anymore. But I think universally, I think we can expect that whether it's rising income tax levels, whether it is increased scrutiny over PPP money on secure cares, I think having a solid relationship with your consultants and with your ERISA team will be prudent, because I think whether it's more scrutiny or more opportunity, there's going to be a lot of things to kick the tires on. So that's kind of I'm giving you 300 words on to not say one, but I think ultimately there's going to be more focus on retirement plans, either opportunity or regulation.
Perfect answer though. Thank you.
Great. Well, we're at a point where we've taken a look at the Secures Act. We've really looked at some high level, how things are impacting the industry, and what's affecting you as plan sponsors. And we understand that the Secures Act is something that you have to adapt to. So now we're going to take a look at the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Relief and Economic Security Act. And this is an area, keep in mind, this is optional to adapt to. When this came down the pipeline hot and heavy, there was a lot of insecurity, I think is a good word, from plan sponsors about how quickly participants were just going to drain the pipe on their retirement accounts. And understanding, being a few months into this, I just wanted to share some statistics if you have been concerned as a plan administrator about allowing your participants to take coronavirus related loans or distributions. Just want to share a little bit first from our friends at Vanguard about what's actually going on in the market. What are participants doing? Initially, we have found so far that only 1.9% of savers have actually taken a coronavirus-related withdrawal. Of the distributions that were taken, 30% of those distributions were under $5,000. So under that small balance cash out provision. So we're in a really safe area there. And then as well, only 4% of savers took out the max. So really went to the greatest extreme, which is that $100,000 cap of taking a withdrawal against their retirement account. So the long-term effects, to Mitch's point, are yet to be seen with all of these provisions, and there have been murmurings and situations of executive orders being signed over the weekend, and we're sure that this will affect and impact what this looks like on an ongoing basis. But at least we have a high-level insight into the action that is being created from participants around the CARES Act. So with that, Jordan is going to take his seat, and I'm so excited to hear from you, Jordan, on really some of the key components of this act.
Yeah, and I think looking at the clock, we're gonna go pretty quick here to stay on topic. But Shelley, I think that your point, we can't underscore it enough. A plan is not required to adopt all the provisions of CARES. On the news, everybody was talking about get $100,000 from your IRA or your retirement account. So there was an onus and a stress and a pressure. At our firm, we service about 700 qualified retirement plans, 500 401k profit sharing plans, and about 200 defined benefit plans. And less than 14%, almost 14%, adopted CARES. The majority of our plans didn't. But for those businesses in challenging circumstances or in dire circumstances, CARES was phenomenal. CARES really brought out 4 things to help participants. And they're highlighted here, and quickly just kind of going to the first one. And now we get our first callback. RMDs, required minimum distributions. So earlier we talked about Secure had changed the RMD age from 70 and a half to 72. Well, the good news is the CARES Act decided that employees were not required to take an RMD during the 2020 year. That due at the time CARES was passed, the market was down, the market volatility. CARES created the opportunity for people to essentially take a pass on their RMDs for the 2020 plan year. This is one of those things that Mitch wanted me to talk about, but not dig too far into because it may constitute tax advice. But uniquely, CARES did say if you took a RMD before CARES, it will be permissible to put that money back into the plan. How that happens, we're still trying to figure it out. But if you took your RMD before CARES and you want to have a conversation with Mitch about, hey, what can I do with that money? Definitely should consider exploring it because the RMD was not required in 2020. And we have a sunset on that. That is, we have to make that decision by August 31st. So still time to make that decision, still time to take action on it. But again, RMDs are not required here in 2020. So the other thing, and Shelley, from the CRDs, we're calling a coronavirus related distribution a CRD. And CARES over 2 different waves rolled out who is a qualified individual, who could qualify for a CARES provision. So assuming that a plan has adopted the CARES provision, there were really 2 waves of who's eligible for a CRD or a coronavirus related loan. And those qualified individuals can take those distributions up to $100,000. And you see those on the screen, but over 2 different field assistance bulletins and updates. Essentially, as Mitch, Shelley, and I joked, just about anybody who can qualify or make the argument that they are a qualified individual for a CRD. We recommend talking to your pension consultant, your ERISA consultant, your CPA, but if a plan adopts CARES, it's a pretty broad definition of who can or can't qualify. One piece of practical advice that I will give you as a retirement plan practitioner and a compliance guy is a little bit outside of what we generally recommend. But what we're being told from our ERISA counsel and what we're sharing with our clients is if your plan has adopted CARES and an individual approaches you about taking a distribution or a loan and they self-certify themselves as a qualified individual, don't overly document it. Don't rush to dig into which of these categories do they fit into, try to make them prove it, different from maybe hardships. On these CRDs, just take that employee self-certification and ensure they have the paperwork to complete that distribution.
And Jordan, I think that is such a good point. Across the board, record keepers all took many different positions and stances with how to deal with 2 aspects of the CARES Act. Do we allow you as an employer to elect into the provisions of the CARES Act, or do we kind of influence you and just offer those provisions available to you? With your participants coming to you and self-certifying, it really is a unique area of this provision. So to Jordan's point, the not over documenting what these participants are saying and just making sure to work with your record keeper, to work with your TPA and follow a prudent process just to ensure that you're covering your bases in the plan offering.
That's right. And the summary here, and the reason we're spending time, discussing this in depth is, for those of you who are unaware or haven't dug into it, the CRD, or coronavirus related distribution, is the single most favorable tax ability for a participant to call on money in the history of ERISA. The 20% withholdings, the 10% penalty for pre-59 and a half have all been shed for subject to ordinary income tax. So access to money in a retirement plan has never been cheaper. We're not saying that's a good thing. We're not saying it's a prudent thing. We're not saying you have to do it. But the reason to explore it is the very favorable tax treatment of these CRDs, or coronavirus related distributions.
And as a best practice, Jordan, would you recommend plan sponsors going through a due diligence with their employees to describe the tax benefits? Or how would you recommend the communications to look with employees who are seeking favorable tax treatment through these distributions?
Yeah, that's a unique one. This is again where the compliance guy says, be sparse with communication. Provide only the required forms. Don't get into high-level analysis. Recommend that participants speak to their CPA or their tax preparer. But we never want a plan sponsor to be in a situation where they become an accidental fiduciary to outside matters or a tax advice on outside matters. Stay the course, give the required information, if you're partnering with a great vendor like the Standard, they have one sheets on this stuff, but don't ad lib on, hey, you can put this money back in the plan. Hey, you can amortize this over 3 years. Present just kind of just the facts, ma'am.
Perfect. That's super helpful. And, I think it's a good point of clarification as we talk about the difference between the impacts of pulling out a coronavirus related distribution versus what we're going to hop into now, which is a coronavirus related loan. And the loan is just as it sounds. There's a requirement for participants to pay it back. In contrast, for a distribution where the participants actually hold the choice to pay back that money. So Jordan, I'm just so curious, like if I'm a participant, why would I want a loan versus a distribution?
Yeah, great question. And Shelley, not giving tax advice, not giving too much, but my opinion, and this is one man's opinion, I think it's a complicated question because a participant who has the ability to call on a $100,000 distribution or a $100,000 loan, the CRD allows an employee to potentially repay that over 3 years or amortize that tax hit over a 3-year period, whereas the loan is going to be a 5-year repayment schedule. And so a $100,000 loan for a participant on a 5-year repayment is going to be a pretty significant payroll hit on a payroll by payroll basis. So I think the CRL is a case by case basis. I think it was nice that the tax code wanted and the government here under CARES wanted to give both options. Again, really consult with your tax preparer, consult with your CPA. From my opinion, I think in many cases, a CRD probably makes more sense, but that is on a kind of macro basis, and I'm not providing any tax advice. But on a macro basis, I think there's a pretty compelling story on CRDs versus CRLs. But again, a plan could have chosen to only offer CRLs. So it's a case-by-case scenario, and Mitch and I'd be happy to explore what a plan has adopted or not adopted with the CRLs. But again, coronavirus-related distributions, coronavirus-related loans, they're available. There's still a lot going on. The loans are going to be open until kind of September 22nd. CRDs available all year. So again, some sunsets coming up, but still time to make decisions. And kind of as we move into the final slide and we look at the horizon, we don't know where the year's going. I wish we did. If we could predict that, probably we'd be on an island and not in an office building. But with PPP loans starting to run out, with kind of Q3, Q4, a lot of the unpredictability of the elections and the market volatility, we could see an increase in adoption of CARES provisions. So it's not too late to turn those features on, but before you do so, have a serious conversation with your ERISA consultant or with your financial advisor.
And such a good point all across the board. And Mitch, I'm sorry, did I steal your thunder there?
Not at all. I just wanted to bring up, Jordan had mentioned, just as PPP loans start to run out, the Secure Act, the CARES Act, they've really been major headlines. As you both spoke about, and Shelley even provided some statistics around, hey, not everyone has adopted these, not everyone is utilizing these. But as we know that whether or not a stimulus bill is passed here, we do know that PPP is starting to really hit its capacity. And when it starts to hit its capacity, that's where we actually might be receiving more questions, or as plan sponsors, plan administrators, and business owners receive these questions from participants or try to figure out different ways around. Hopefully, Jordan, I'm letting this be a very good segue for this, but uh, just for those who maybe have experienced it, I know you're going to share just a little bit of if you're struggling, as you can see on the slide, but would you mind, I know we've got a little bit of time left, would you mind just sharing a case study as to if that is happening, someone who's been successful, even if their plan or even if their business is hurting right now, just what they can do to mitigate some of that risk would be very helpful.
Yeah, and so again, we always want to put on two different hats, a plan sponsor hat and a plan participant hat. Speaking specifically to plan sponsors, the business owners right now, if your company's struggling, you can always adopt the CARES provisions and make sure, and again, this is another practitioner's tip, if you adopt CARES because you yourself are planning to take a CRD, you must tell your entire company. You cannot simply activate CARES for yourself. You need to broadcast that out. That's what's called a benefits, rights, and feature. You are required to offer those same features to everyone. So if a business is struggling, I think adopting CARES is a no-brainer, Mitch. And then we can get into the plan design conversations. I think we can have conversations around what does suspending safe harbor look like? If you suspend safe harbor, you're going to be subject to some non-discrimination and compliance tests you've probably avoided in the past. If you have a discretionary match, maybe it's time to consider suspending that match, or trying to change some of those allocation conditions if applicable, to help preserve some capital. And of course, we're very fortunate, but we have had a handful of clients who have had to consider terminating the plan, had to, kind of shut everything down as a product of they just can't open. So definitely we are seeing companies figure it out, working with your third-party administration firm, your financial advisor, to kind of project out, I think is going to be important. Because Mitch, I'm with you. I think that PPP buoyed us for a while. But it'll be interesting to see as accounts receivable continue to age, as supply chains maybe get affected again. It could be that PPP lifted us up temporarily, or it could be it lifted us to the other side. I am, again, out of the predictions game. So as a compliance guy, and then I'm surprised by any the worst. But on the surprising side, I would say that uniquely, we are seeing some businesses flourish right now. We are seeing some businesses where there are opportunities to utilize defined benefit plans, profit sharing, even non-qualified retirement plans, because the beauty of capitalism, the beauty of a market economy is some people are always going to find ways to be successful. A great story is we work with a licensed manufacturer who for a very specific and well-known building here in the US, they license all the manufacturing for magnets and t-shirts and lanyards when you go into the store at this building. Well, they have traditionally done somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 to $12 million of gross a year. They pivoted to making PPE immediately and are projecting to make greater than $50 million gross this year. And they never planned for it. They've never thought about that. So that's an extreme example, but I give that extreme on one end to just show there's opportunity for many. And, we've talked a lot of dense stuff. We've talked the Secure Act. We've talked about CARES. We've talked about if a plan's struggling. But we are writing new plans. We're writing new plans across all areas of business. We're helping existing plans find more ways for tax deduction and wealth accumulation. There's a lot of opportunity out there, either to get to the other side, or to take advantage of some of the tax deduction opportunities that are presented. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. This is a wonderful time to be in the retirement plan space because we have more tools than ever before. But I think that we're definitely seeing a lot of people struggling, but also a lot of people doing quite well.
And it's just such a great advantage to know that we can support people in the retirement plan industry, whatever phase of the business cycle that you're currently in and undertaking. And if you do find yourself in a position where you're flourishing and the business is doing well, or if the business is struggling, we have found on both sides of the coin, what has become so important is to retain those key employees that are really a high factor for your business processing and functioning, and keeping that stability through these times that are kind of unforeseen and new to all of us. So we can talk with whatever sides of the coin that you're on to how you can retain and keep those key employees really happy in that full benefit package without taking away any benefits for the rest of those employees. So still a lot of unknowns in both ends, the Secure Act and the CARES Act, but we're just working, with great companies like Beacon Pointe to keep you up to date, to keep you in the know, and make sure that you have all the tools that you need as a plan administrator to feel comfortable and successful in this new remote environment.
Perfect. Yeah. And thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Jordan, for both just again being the subject matter experts. It was dense information, you're right. And so we were able to get through it. It's about 15 minutes till our hour is up. I want to make sure all specific questions are addressed. So again, looking through the emails, we will be able to get back to you, but just to be cognizant of time. Shelley and Jordan, again, we've mentioned that you're the subject matter experts, but also being tools in the arsenal just to make sure if people have any things that they're worried about. The standard, and Shelley has done a wonderful job. Jordan and Cross Plans, again, both wonderful jobs for a lot of our clients. But I want to ask you each both just to spend 1 or 2 minutes talking about if I'm a plan administrator, a plan sponsor, or a business owner. I'm halfway through this year. I know a lot of things have changed. We've talked about the headlines today, but what is one thing that I should really focus on going into my either annual plan review or my plans, my 401k plan next year? What is one thing I should really focus on?
Well, I'm happy to dive into that question, right? It is the best time of year heading into compliance testing to get your data right, to get your employee and participant information reconciled, to make sure you have accurate addresses and up-to-date employee information. Being in this remote environment, the impetus for that accuracy becomes even more important. As we move towards census time, it will get more difficult if the participant information that you have is inaccurate or out of date. It's only going to cause complications for you. The standard has great vehicles and mechanisms where we actually scrub data on every single payroll period to help you with that participant reconciliation of data, because it can be so cumbersome. It's always changing. It's Southern California. People are moving like it's going out of style. We can't keep homes on the market. So we know it's going to be a factor down the road, and we want to do what we can to make testing easier for you this year, and at least diminish one of the headaches that are to be seen.
Yeah, and Mitch, I think that from my side, it's about preliminary illustrations, preliminary testing, planning. Because I think that if you're having the greatest year you've ever had, or you foresee some challenges, and you've got accrued contributions the plan's going to make, you have to make a safe harbor or a profit sharing or a defined benefit plan contribution. Don't wait until December, January, February to know those numbers. By the middle of September, your consultant should be able to give a pretty good look at what the year end looks like. And again, it could be the wide gamut of things to, hey, maybe we should be considering adding a defined benefit pension plan. Or it could be, hey, maybe we need to consider moving from the non-elective safe harbor in 2020 to a safe harbor match in 2021. Maybe we need to be thinking about adding safe harbor. But I think that because of the uncertainty around 2020. I think the more planning that we do, and assuming, and hopefully there aren't too many CPAs on this call, but assuming that the CPAs aren't going to be overly proactive in planning, talk to your ERISA consultants, talk to your TPAs, third-party administrators, to run some early numbers, some scenarios, evaluate your plan design, both for more discretion, more flexibility, more deduction, or to scale stuff back. I think planning is and again that's a data point as well. But more planning is what I'd recommend.
Perfect. So more planning and keeping track of everything. That's it's always wonderful things to hear from those who have to do it. So again, Jordan and Shelley, thank you both so much for spending the time just sharing with what we're seeing in 2020. And hey, any last little thoughts that you have? Otherwise, we are gonna let everyone go about 10 minutes before the hour is up.
Just like to thank everyone for joining today. You know, we are wishing you and your families all the best and staying well and healthy, and also sending the best luck for creativity as you find activities that are entertaining for you and your family here and over the summer.
Yeah, no, just thank you to you, Mitch, and to your team, to Robin, the people behind the scenes, all the great team members at Beacon Point. We're grateful for the relationship. We're grateful to be on this call today, and thank you for the opportunity. Again, this was a high level, really quick overview. Mitch and Shelley had me trim down my 6-hour presentation to this, so happy to explore in greater detail offline.
Perfect. And he is not kidding. He's got quite a bit of information left. But with that being all said, thank you both so much. We are going to go ahead and end this. Again, any questions, please forward them to me at mhughes@beaconpoint.com, and we will make sure we get you connected to the right partner. With that, Robin, go ahead and shut us down.